Hello, my fellow comic book collectors. This is going to be another in my series of controversial comics. And this one is another fun one, I hope. It is actually a pretty mainstream comic that is only really maybe controversial in hindsight. Um, and it is this one, Superman's Girlfriend, Lois Lane 106. And this is controversial now because it's kind of one of those things that's a little silly. Basically, in the comic, Lois Lane wants to find out what it is really like to be black. And she basically uses this machine in order to change herself into a black woman. So it is a doozy. I'm going to read the story or summarize it for you, and I hope you enjoy. So let's get into it. So here's it's really actually kind of super funny story. So even the cover, it's like I'm curious black. it's just it's pretty heavy-handed. At the time when they created this comic, they were really trying to reach out to the black community and maybe expand their readership into the black community. And they were trying to be like, social justicey for the time. This is written during the 70s. It's during, the whole Black Power kind of Black Panther and, Black is Beautiful time period of the 70s. So this was a kind of a controversial book because it wanted to kind of expose the life that Black Americans face, and it was trying to do it, in a good way, but maybe it didn't age so well. So let's get into the comic itself. So it all starts out with this is sort of a future looking thing. Look at me straight in the eyes, Superman. Tell me the truth. Will you marry me just the way I am? you know, so it's like sort of like, would he marry a black woman, right? So, this is supposed to be Lois Lane. She's changed herself into a black woman. Now, the comic explains how this all happens. So, what happens is she wants to do a piece on what it's like to be African American or black in America. Okay, so she wants to go to Little Africa inside of Metropolis. So she takes a cab. She goes down to Little Africa. It's just so bad on so many levels. Little Africa, and she tries to talk to the people there. But when she gets there, they all turn away from her. They don't want to talk to her because she's a white reporter. So she, knocks on somebody's door and says, hey, I just want to do a story on what it's like to live in, black, the black part of town. And, would you be interested in being interviewed? And nope, everyone just sort of looks at her with suspicion. They see this white woman and they just don't want to talk to her. They avoid her like the plague. Yeah, right there it says that. Okay, so she then even sees a blind woman, and she's like, hey, she seems friendly. She might be willing to, and she won't see that I'm white. But once she talks, the black blind woman says, "Oh, I'm not interested." Basically, she just walks away from her, and she sees even like a black protester, and basically he's like saying, "Hey, avoid the whitey person, right?" And it's like he even calls her the enemy. Okay, so this is how racially tense this situation is. So she's like, oh, I'll never be able to find out the truth of the black experience in Little Africa. So she's like, oh, maybe Superman can help me. So she's like, she basically talks to Superman and says, hey, you have this special device, and that can transform things. Why don't you transform me into a black woman, and then I can live as a black woman and sort of experience what it's like to be, and maybe do some interviewing in Little Africa. So he puts her into the machine and she becomes a black woman with afro and everything. Like, she takes on the black, totally the black stereotype, which is wonderful. So yeah, so she takes a cab. She tries to get a cab, and at first she's kind of getting some of the experience of maybe being black, because cabs won't stop for her, and they just go right past her like she didn't exist. And she's like, oh wow, that's kind of crazy. And when she's riding the subway to go to this Little Africa, she sees that people are kind of staring at her kind of strangely because she's black. So it's like, it's like kind of giving a little bit of the black experience. And then she finally makes her way to Little Africa, and she, she sees like there's like a dumpster fire. So she puts out the dumpster fire, and somebody says, "Oh wow, thanks for saving us," basically. And that person's like, "Hey, come up to my apartment. I'll make you some coffee." Okay, so she like comes up to the woman's apartment, and the apartment is just filthy. It's because it's a rundown apartment building, and it's not the woman's fault. It's a very rundown apartment building. It has rats, and the rat kind of startles Lois Lane, and the woman chases the rat out. Uh, so she's like, "Wow, this is pretty harsh," and she's like, the woman's like so nice to her actually, and she basically is willing to help Lois Lane, even though she in herself is actually in a pretty harsh situation. So she thinks, wow, these people are really great. Then she goes, out into the street to meet some more people to interview, and she sees like an activist, and he's telling people, he's telling these children, about black pride and like be proud to be black. uh, if this was races reversed, it would not be so good, but but because it's black people, it's okay that they're going, hey, black is beautiful. So you know she's watching this activist do this, and then she meets a man who is sees her paying attention to this. And suddenly, something strange happens. She sees some kids going down an alley, and something's not right. So the man goes over to try to find out what's going on. And sure enough, there's some mobsters or gangsters, uh, and they are maybe attacking these kids, and they end up shooting the guy. Okay, so Lois Lane's like, oh my goodness, this guy was only trying to help, and she's like, tries to save the guy. Superman, being like, kind of paranoid about his girlfriend going out to Little Africa, he's nearby, and he basically uses his X-ray vision, or not X-ray vision, but his you know ray, eye ray, to basically destroy the gun so that they can't hurt Lois. So he then, beats up the guys and flies the injured man to the hospital. But it's the nearest hospital, and it's just happens that it's a black run hospital because it's in the black little Africa town, and basically it doesn't have all the facilities that a white hospital would have. So they don't have any blood supply, and they need blood for a transfusion. They need a special type of blood, O negative. It just happens though that Lois Lane is type O negative. So she's like, oh, I can save him. I can give my blood and save him. So she gives her blood and she like saves the man. Now, this transformation that Lois has taken on is it's only going to last 24 hours and the time is almost up. So she's going to revert back into being a white woman again. And suddenly that's what happens. She reverts back into her normal self. And everyone's shocked. Oh my goodness, who is this white woman here? And she's like, oh, how is this guy going to react when he finds out that he was saved by a white woman? So that's the controversy here in the story. Um, and so she goes to him and says, hey, look, it was me that saved you. And instead of her, at first he's a bit shocked, but he instead being like mad or anything, he basically smiles and they shake hands and there's that bond, and that's the end of the story. That's how it ends. They it's sort of like they shake hands, white person and a black person, and that's the whole story. So maybe nowadays this would be kind of considered a little weird, but it was really trying to mend any race relationships between the black community and the white community. But this is considered one of those controversial comics, and I actually think it's not a bad story. Ultimately, I think it was told reasonably well. It has a few cliches in it, but I thought it was it was funny. It was it was interesting to see the way people thought back then, and that's why I do these videos on controversial comics because it gives us a perspective of the way people thought at different times. And we might not agree with everything that they thought, and things do change where perspectives change, but it does give us insight. And that's really why we read comics, to give us insight and to tell interesting stories. So I personally thought it was a very interesting, entertaining story. Um, and yeah, I enjoy these kind of controversial comics because of the controversy sometimes. So I wonder what you think. What is your opinion of this? Does this story still have merit today? What do you think of these controversial comics? And please leave a comment below and subscribe to my channel. And thanks for watching. Bye for now.